Welcome to the D6 Family Ministry Podcast, a place where ideas, principles, and personalities come together to give you a ministry advantage that empowers the church and home.
I don't know anything more important in our society or in the kingdom of God than to help the church, help the family.
Discipleship is not an event, it's a way of life.
And one day it just hit me that discipleship at home was not about doing more. It was about inviting Christ into what we were already doing.
The goal of family ministry is not families sitting on the couch holding hands and singing Kumbaya. The ultimate goal is families that love God, love people, and make disciples of all peoples.
So that's why you're here. You're here to say 1 hour a week, as significant and as awesome as it is, we know that it's not enough and we want to be intentional with every hour.
You're listening to the D6 Podcast. Here are your hosts, Marianne Howard, Ron Hunter, and Josh Wooten.
Our guest today, John McGee, you'll hear later in the podcast, but all you baseball families out there may be a little jealous because he and his family put an adventure out there for themselves to visit every single Major League Baseball stadium in the United States. And it got us talking off air just about sports and family and how it can be an incredible bonding opportunity, whether you have a kid on a team or whether your family roots for a team. So I just thought it'd be fun because one of the podcasts in the past, I learned a little something about Ron. Because when I think of you, Ron, no offense, but I don't think like sports is not the first thing that crosses my mind.
No, it's not.
You have a little Ted Lasso in you, so to speak. You have a history. Why don't you tell us what kind of sporting family were you guys growing up, Ron?
Oh man, we are 100% soccer. I mean, when our son was really small, we did baseball. And when we saw him sitting down, digging in the dirt, not paying attention to the game, we realized, hey, this is not his sport. And we swapped over and we did about 11, 12 years of soccer and our kids loved it. And to this day, my son follows every major game, World Cup, FIFA, you name it. So what about you, Josh? What about your family?
Oh, well, growing up, I was with you. I was a soccer guy. I was never big enough to really play football, didn't really care for it. Now I love to watch football. But actually, when our daughter was not a sporting enthusiast at all. She cheered, so we'd go to her football games. But as far as my son, he was a basketball guy. So we spent a lot of time in the gyms watching basketball games. Now, I'm with your son. I love to watch soccer, love college football, and I'm kind of a sports guy. I'll watch almost anything except for golf, and I watch baseball in the World Series time of year.
Yes.
Oh, wow.
What about you, Marianne?
Well, I live in Dallas, Texas. So when you live in Dallas, Texas, you become like a crazy fan of sporting things. So we are hardcore Dallas Cowboys. We are hardcore Dallas Mavericks. And I'm telling you, my son loves Luka Doncic on lots of levels. And any chance he can see Luka play live, he saves up his allowance to do it.
He's watching Uncle Luka.
Uncle Luka, that's going to be his my MJ for him. That's his MJ, Luka Doncic.
Yes.
And so and then my husband, he went to Texas Tech. So college basketball and college football we bleed red and black, and it's a whole thing here.
Oh yeah, yeah. It's funny. We are such fans of sports to where we know all the stats. You talked about Luka. We all have our favorites. We can dive in deeply there. Are we fans of other areas other than sports, though? Can we say we put enough energy into other areas? Our marriage, for example, that John's going to talk about, but John's going to challenge us on this now. Let's do this. Let's ask this question before we jump straight into the interview. Without giving away anything, what do they need to pay attention to? What's one thing? And I won't answer this question. I just want to see if you, Josh, or you, Marianne, want to say, hey, you got to watch for this coming.
Stay tuned to the very end of the interview, because I think he talks about a lot of different things, and he says one statement that pretty much sums up the interview. And
Yeah.
it is not comfortable. My toes are broken.
Yes.
Woo!
Yeah. You may want to put your lipstick on or something, because he's going to cause you to look in the mirror.
Oh, there you go. There you go.
Oh, gosh.
And that is one of the things I appreciate. And also, I'm not a pretty sight sometimes, most of the time. So, but as Scripture says, a fool looks in the mirror and forgets what he saw when he walks away. And so, I would advise you to take some notes and know that it is all in love, and with the ultimate goal of us all becoming better ministry leaders, better spouses, better parents and grandparents. So tune in, listen to this interview, and we will see you guys on the other side of it. John McGee.
Start connecting with your family today with the D6 Family app, available for free. Based on Deuteronomy 6, D6 is the leading voice in family ministry. Scripture teaches that parents are the primary disciplers of their children. The D6 Family app delivers resources that are updated weekly and designed to equip you for generational discipleship. Resources include family fun questions, weekly splinks, parent pages, family fun nights, foundational talks, the D6 podcast, and more. Connecting with your family has never been this easy or fun. Download the D6 Family app today.
Today, I am joined by John McGee. John is a Senior Director of Watermark Resources at Watermark Community Church in Dallas, Texas. He is also the co-creator of Re-Engage, a church-based marriage enrichment program used in over 500 churches. John and his wife Pam have been married for 25 years and love making memories with their 4 kids. And, get this, they have seen a baseball game in every major league stadium. John, thanks for being here, and I've got a lot of questions for you.
Thanks, Steve. Thanks for letting me be here. Fire away.
If you don't like sports, hit that 30-second plus button for a couple times, because I just have a couple questions. But first of all, this is fascinating. Is this correct? You've been to every MLB stadium?
No, it's a lie. It's all a lie. I've made that up. No, it is. So we just, over 5 summers, we took our kids to go see a game in every Major League Baseball park. So it was a little bit about baseball. I have 2 boys, 2 girls. They love, baseball. But really, it was kind of almost had nothing to do with baseball. It was about making memories together, seeing the country, and just having an excuse to get out and explore. And so, so it took us to a lot of places we wouldn't have gone, elsewhere. And then, gave us an opportunity to hike across the Grand Canyon in one day, or the top of Half Dome, or take a boat and, rent a pontoon boat in Chicago. If you ever get a chance to do that, if you're not from Chicago, they'll actually let you rent a pontoon boat. You can go out there with all the big boats, and then at night the sun goes down. So it just, during the summers, especially with my role, I just sometimes don't do as good a job slowing down as I could, and it just forced us kind of these 2-week blocks to go make memories. So, yeah.
Well, I got to ask you, what's the best stadium, your favorite stadium, and what is the biggest dump, if I'm allowed to say that?
Yeah. So biggest dump by far. Well, there's 2 close ones. So any list is going to have Oakland A's. So their old one, which is that'll probably be the next one to be torn down. Old concrete. But what's great about that one is you have a lot of A's fans who are there when they were great, and so it's a great place to actually watch a ball game because all the fans really know baseball. And so I remember there was a squeeze play coming up, and you could just feel the energy in the stadium because all these older people knew they knew baseball. They weren't there for any other reason than their love for baseball because the A's weren't very good. So that's normally number 2, and then number 1 I think has to be Tampa Bay. Have you ever been to that stadium before?
I have not, and apparently not many people have. People in Tampa.
It feels like the State Fair of Texas. You cannot believe it's a Major League Baseball stadium. So the ceiling's really, really low. And so it's almost like skee ball where you hit these different rings, and there's actually foul ball poles that hang from the top because you hit the ceiling so often. The umpire's got to be able to see like if it was fair or foul. And so the floor feels like a really bad '80s skating rink, and it's the whole thing is pretty comical. But you can still win. You can still win a lot of ball games in a really crummy ballpark. So, but that's probably the worst. But in some ways, it's kind of fun because of that. Because it was just so bad.
And do you have a favorite just of all time?
It's got to be either Wrigley. Or Fenway. Those are the two old ones, and it's pretty special. So it's pretty special.
Well, in some ways, I'd say what we're talking about today has nothing to do with baseball, but
it was really interesting
because you talked about this. In some ways, it had nothing to do with baseball with your trip. Had to do with family ministry, and we're talking today about marriage ministry, and it's what you've called the missing piece of most family ministries. We're here at the D6 conference, and here at the conference, you mentioned that many family ministry models are great at equipping parents, but they don't prioritize marriages. Why does marriage often take a back seat in family ministry?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, there's so many reasons. Generally, I think of a couple. One would be organizationally or structurally. A lot of times what happens is it's the children's pastor. He gets a couple years older, and then he becomes the family minister. And so he knows kids ministry, he knows junior high school ministry, maybe college ministry, and that's kind of his domain. And that doesn't really cross over that. Sometimes sometimes it actually is part of his job description. Or her job description would be to care for marriages, but then there's just only so many calories you can burn in a day, and they just kind of can't get to that. So I think a lot of times there's structural things. Two, I think we don't do a good job talking about the importance of marriage in all things family ministry. And so the illustration I gave, today earlier was that of the source of a river. And a lot of times when in family ministry, we're starting about halfway down the river. So we're teaching parents to disciple their kids. But what happens, I've just seen this over and over and over again. If you get a mom and dad who love each other and love Jesus, if they don't have any of your really awesome tools, they'll probably, as an overflow, just disciple their kids. And then conversely, there's some incredible tools out there. Randall House has some of the people that you serve have created their own. But parents won't use. I mean, if Pam and I, my wife, if we were fighting like cats and dogs, and you sent a great sheet home with me to talk about my kids, that's not going to happen. It won't happen at my kitchen table. It won't happen in my living room. It sure won't happen in each other's presence. But conversely, we love Jesus and we love each other. Whether you gave us a take-home sheet or not from church, over lunch, we're probably just as an outflow of who we are. We're going to talk about that. So I think there's lots of reasons. Sometimes our own marriages aren't very good. Sometimes, senior pastor or family minister, their marriages aren't good. They feel a little disingenuous talking about that. There's a couple things. So I don't know all the reasons why, but I do know it's really important.
Well, in your work with newlyweds, parents with children, empty nesters, basically every group that's out there in every life stage, do you see one group that seems to need help more than others, or is this prevalent for all ages and all life stages?
There's nobody that doesn't need help. It used to be that you would think about the 50-plus crew as like, hey, they've kind of made it at that point. They're running downhill with the wind at their back. That's actually one of the demographics. I don't know the last couple years, but previously it was the one demographic that was climbing in divorce rates. So people are living longer, and they're just going, you know what? I still got a few more years, and if I'm not happy, I'm out. And so that's been prevalent. So you would have thought they were immune. They're not. First couple years of marriage are really, really strategic. Often lots of divorces there. Teenagers are tough. But I would say if there's just one where it's just hard just to survive, get out of bed in the morning, it's with little kids. And that's where the church is, I think, has a really incredible opportunity there just to serve those families. They're probably in the greatest just need in every way, physically, emotionally, and they need a lot of help. So as do their marriages.
Yeah. Well, your ministry does many things, but one of the key components is helping to enrich and restore marriages. Now, ideally, every marriage would be perfect with no issues whatsoever. I don't think that's ever existed in the course of marriage.
Since the fall, yeah.
So what are some of the biggest issues that you're seeing Christian couples face today as it relates to marriage?
Yeah, God, that's such a great question. The biggest issues. Well, James 4:1 would tell us selfishness. That's why we fight. And so that's everything else is just an outworking, of that. But I think you've got a lot of busyness. And so people have a really hard time just connecting the way that they did. It's my sin and selfishness still would have surfaced 60, 70 years ago before I had electricity and internet and things like that. But I had a lot more just time just to be with my wife, right? So I think busyness would be one. I think, overemphasis on kids and all the kids' sports, although I don't think that's the reason. I think that there's just a general lack of just desire, honoring of marriage. I think maybe marriage isn't being as honored as it once was, or definitely as it should be. That might be one. It feels like the only two options are to have a marriage that people want to interview you about, write books about, put you on Oprah to figure out why, or you get divorced. And that's not how it works. And generally, the most those marriages where they're just completely over the top, a lot of times they don't end up making it, but they do the book tour and then they, I can tell you names on that. So I think that it's just, it's hard. Marriage is tough. That I think about that verse, 1 Corinthians 7:28. It's the one promise about marriage that there is, that Paul says those who marry will have trouble. And so I think it's just a normalizing of that and understanding that, it's not always going to be easy. It's not always going to be incredible. But man, it's God's design, and he who finds a wife finds a good thing, So yeah, there's a couple thoughts.
Well, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, I'm going to ask John about some stigmas and also about therapy. So we'll be right back.
Did you know that because of D6 Heroes, Randall House and D6 Family are able to equip families far and wide in the area of generational discipleship? Due to the financial gifts of both individuals and churches, D6 curriculum has been translated into multiple languages and distributed across the globe, including restricted access countries for use in the underground church. In short, because of the financial gifts of individuals like you, moms and dads all over the world can pass their faith to the next generation of believers. Would you consider becoming a D6 hero? A D6 hero is an individual who invests their financial resources in the ministry of Randall House and D6 Family to ensure that believers can transfer their faith through the church and home. Please visit d6hero.com to join the ranks of our heroes and to explore other areas where your financial investment can have an impact.
We are back, and we're talking with John McGee about marriage ministry and how it's the missing piece of most family ministries. Now, John, sometimes there's a stigma in the church, and we look down on those couples who go to therapy or counseling or who would even take part in a marriage ministry or marriage class. What can churches do to destroy that stigma?
Yeah, well, it's a great. I think one, we just before the break we mentioned 1 Corinthians 7:28. So just believe that to be the case, that marriage is tough, after the fall, and when you present it, when you talk about marriage, I think whoever it is that has the microphone, the pastor, I think you want to normalize struggle and pain and difficulty and the repenting of sin. That just needs to be a part of the way you talk about marriage and all relationships. So that'd be one. Number two, I think that anybody that goes and either sees a therapist or goes to a marriage ministry, you make heroes out of them. And so here's a line you can use. Hey, the healthiest people in our church, they go to our marriage ministry, whatever it's called. They go to our recovery ministry. And so you make heroes out of them and say those are generally some of the most obedient disciples we have, and you just lift them up. So rather than there be a stigma, make the social pressure the other way. Hey, what's your problem? Why aren't you going to marriage ministry or to recovery ministry or something like that?
What would you say to lead pastors who might encourage their people and say, yeah, this is great for you, but they think there's no way I could ever go to that because of how it's going to look on me?
What would I say? Yeah, you want a really hot take? Here's a hot take. Fix it, deal with it, or resign.
Ooh.
I mean, because the gospel, this is just crazy, right? So the only thing I have to do to be a Christian is to admit that I'm messed up. That's the only requirement to get in this club. And so what happens is then once I'm in, then I pretend like I got in here another way, or that somehow isn't true anymore. Transformation is not an event, it's a process. And we will struggle. We will have pain and struggle, and we will do things we don't want to do. And so you're not discipling your people if you only pretend that everything is incredible. And I don't know that you maybe even believe the gospel if you have to present everything as great, right? Does that make sense? So I'd say. I believe the gospel for my salvation a long time ago, but I don't actually believe and preach the gospel that I am a sinner. I'm the chief sinner. And so senior pastor, senior leader, family ministry have a lot to do with the way your people view sin and transformation. And I just encourage you to be honest about that. And you don't have to make stuff up. And it could be, but let them in on whatever it is that your struggle is.
Well, I know there's people out there that are going, okay, yeah, this makes sense, and this has been the missing piece of our ministry. We need to do something about it. How can churches begin to strengthen their marriage ministry so that it complements their current family ministry?
It's because there's just so many differences. There's not a model. I guess, what I encourage churches to do is start with kind of the resources they have, as well as their opportunities. And so think about where those two lines cross. So example would be if you've got a lot of older couples that got great marriages, and you also have a lot of younger people, younger families who they need discipleship, they need wisdom. Then that's a place you could start, right? If I didn't have a lot of pre-marrieds in my church, I wouldn't start a pre-married ministry. So just figure out kind of where you feel like you've got need and opportunity, and then wherever you've got like resources or kind of these like little pockets of strength, and just pick one. In some churches, there's if you want to have a really, really robust marriage ministry, there's lots of things you can do, but I'd pick one thing and I'd do that well first, put some points on the board, and then go think about something else.
Okay, and we've talked about the church, and I want to focus on the home just for a second, because marriage mainly takes place in the home. Yeah. What's one practical thing that couples can start doing today that will help their marriage? Okay,
well, it's at the individual level. I think the thing I shared today was work on you. And so the metaphor we used was that of drawing a circle around yourself. And so, we'll say in our re-engage ministry that we have at our church, we say, if you want to fix your marriage, you draw a circle around yourself and fix everybody inside the circle. So just have this posture that you're going to work on you and not try to change your spouse. And you absolutely, if your spouse is in sin or they're abusive or just, they're doing things that are unbecoming or just frustrating, like say those things. But have the posture just to really work on you. So that'd be one. And then two, I would say do whatever it is that's fun, energizing to you, like whatever that is, and don't apologize for it, and just put it on the calendar or whatever that thing is. And so I've got a friend. It's just this is not my thing. But they just love to go dancing, right? I hate that, and so, but they absolutely should put that on the calendar. Okay, so Pam and I we love to travel, and so if we're gonna squirt outside the lines of our budget, that's where we do it. We're gonna cheat on us, or we're gonna cheat on us, and so we just do some things that are just fun to us, and just marriage is a relationship. Relationships take time and energy, and our marriages are a perfect reflection of the amount of energy and time we put in and invest in them.
Well, this has been great. Just so many great ideas that we can, really I feel like what you just said we can implement today in our personal lives, and as a church we can start implementing and growing with this. I got to ask right before we go though, best hot dog in the major leagues goes to...
Oh, that's a great question. How about this? Can I give you the worst?
Yeah, sure.
So we went to a game in Cleveland, and it was a rain delay, and it was dollar hot dog night, and they had pre-made these hot dogs probably 8:00 the night before kind of thing, and so our kids are like dollar hot guys, literally you can eat as many hot dogs as you want, and they were so excited, and so we bought 15 hot dogs or something, and they were so cold and they were so bad, and we sat And while it's raining, we sat in the tunnel and ate these cold hot dogs. Which, like, what 6-year-old kid gives a hot dog back? But they're like, we're done. We're out on these hot dogs. And so that was the worst. Always a sucker for a really, really good Chicago dog with the pickle spear and the celery salt. But the worst that day by far went to the Cleveland Indians.
Well, the only thing that would have made it worse is if you put some Skyline chili on there. Yeah, you heard me, Cincinnati.
That's a thing.
You heard me.
That is a thing. Everybody should try it once.
That's it. Well, John, thank you so much for being here. This has been a lot of fun, David. And just a lot of good knowledge that we can take away from this. Thanks so much.
Yeah, thanks.
Oh man, wow. Okay, Marianne, what's the phrase? What's the phrase? You
draw a circle around yourself and work on what's in the circle.
Exactly.
Yes.
If you want to fix your marriage, that's where it starts.
Woo!
He said that on Main Stage D6 2022.
To John Forrest.
Yes, it was a mic drop moment.
Yes.
And there's not any better advice. John's a leading marriage expert, ministry expert. Their church has helped more marriages probably than any other church in North America. And I want to be very cautious because there's some great churches out there. But one of the goals they set out was to have the highest level or percentages of marriages from that Dallas-Fort Worth area flow through their church and impact them in some way. And they've been able to accomplish it over the last decade and a half. They're doing incredible work. So if you're doing marriage ministry, you need to contact John McGee of Watermark Church, their re-engage ministry. And they get so many different layers to this. It is powerful. So Josh, what's your takeaway? What's something else we need to look at there?
Well, I love how that he's placed an emphasis on the importance of marriage ministry. And because so often, as he says, children's pastors become family pastors. And granted, we all should be working together, but most churches think, well, we've got a children's pastors, families are taken care of. And really, pastoring children is a full-time job within itself. And so I think it's important to know that children's ministry, high school ministry, and even college ministry, they all work together to empower the family at home, because marriage is at home. It doesn't really happen just at church or in that 1 hour.
Yeah,
that's right.
And I think that's the important thing. Even me, as I seek to do that in my own church, I'm going, I wish I just had one person to go, this is our family pastor. This is his sole focus, because from John's church, you see the fruit.
Yes.
Within having that role and that person dedicated to that. And of course, it starts from the top down. So kudos to John for seeing the importance of that.
I walked away with a heart. He made me aware of something that I wasn't aware of, and it kind of broke my heart. But he talked about the statistic of 50-year-olds and older, the divorce rates are climbing.
Mm-hmm.
And that left me pausing. Because I think he's right. We make assumptions that, oh, well, they're on the second half and they've got this down. They've been married, 20, 30 years now. So it's like this, easy. And that's a crazy misconception, because marriage is never easy. But I am thankful that he said that, because I think as ministry leaders, we've got to tune in and not just assume that if they are 50 years and older, that they don't need to work on their marriage.
Yeah.
He called out the pastors too. I don't know if you guys caught that little moment, but he really called out transparency in pastoral leadership in this area. And guys, I just want to say that, our greatest commodity as church leaders is trust and transparency. We don't have the margin anymore to sweep things under the rug and hide. And so I'm very thankful that he voiced transparency with pastors and marriages, and just making sure that they're leading from a transparent place. And that's really what the gospel is all about, is a need for Christ's sanctification and Christ's blood to clean us up,
Yeah.
And he even mentioned about the pastors sometimes will shy away from that subject because theirs is not great at home. And we become not addicted, but we just become enamored with our job and overwhelmed with our job that we're so busy. Sometimes our spouses can take a back seat if you're not really careful. And it's I'm glad that he approached that and just went not around the bush, but just went straight at it, and to let pastors know it's okay to not have it all together all the time, and just the importance of that transparency, because that speaks much more volume than the facade of I've got a great marriage when I really don't.
Yeah. I was really taken aback by the sin of selfishness in marriage. And when I began to evaluate, I'm like, man, almost everything that pops up in my marriage is usually my selfishness. What I want or what I prefer, or I think it should be done this way, or, that whether it's controlling selfishness, whatever it is, I thought, wow. And that goes back to that circle comment, Marianne. Let me draw that circle and start working on me, and makes a huge, huge difference in where we are. So what would you give our audience listeners one takeaway, a piece of marriage advice that you have adopted in your family that you want to leave them with as we exit this episode? Josh?
Well, it's like the question when asked, what is one practical thing that couples can start today to help their marriage? And work on you. Don't try to change your spouse.
Yeah.
That's kind of where Marianne started. That circle around yourself and work on that, because if you do that and seek to serve your spouse and outserve them, you're going to be all right.
I think practically for me, if I'm not careful, I can lean towards a critical lens. And so we're working really hard, Chad and I, in our marriage to affirm and encourage regularly.
Yeah.
I think there can be like things we take for granted, and just, she knows I love her, or he knows I think this of his leadership. And no, I want to just say to all the spouses out there, please don't assume that they know. They need to be told. And I'm just voicing to you transparently, there are two things that we work really hard at, and that's affirming each other, for affirming each other with, thank you for doing that. I appreciate that you did that. I see that you're leading well in that. Just affirm, because the devil, he's a sly dog when it comes to that in marriage. Number two, be intentional with your time, whatever that's going to look like. We have date day. I know Lena and Josh have date day. I know Ron dates his wife while they watch shows together. It's so cool. I love it. But you've got to be intentional with your time. That's how relationships foster and flourish.
Yeah. Well, for me, mine would be, if you want a strong commitment, don't make your marriage conditional. So often we're like, okay, I'll do this if she'll do that. And the conditions sets us up for failure and disappointment all day long. Yeah. So that would be my one suggestion. Ask yourself, how often do I get upset because I expected something before I returned something? So thank you, John McGee, for great, great insight into our world. Next week, we're going to be talking with Mike McGarry. And who would have thought that you could mix the Marvel universe with theology? Yeah. Stay tuned next week to dive into Mike McGarry. We'll see you then.
You've been listening to the D6 Podcast. You can learn more about D6 at d6family.com.